Jon Cooper, our go-to, Ourlad's guide to the NFL draft on many things coming up, of course, not yet this month, but a month from now with the NFL draft and on Wednesdays at 4 o'clock with Paul and Craig, and I'm David Smoak. Jon, thank you again for your time. Does the Lamar Jackson story affect anything at the top of the first round of the draft?
You know, not at this point. I think the only team I could see doing anything with him is Indianapolis. And right now, and I'm not sure they talk about doing due diligence and things of that nature. But other than that, I suppose if the Ravens want to make that trade and get that pick, Indianapolis's pick, and then that could possibly change things. I don't see that happening, but you never know.
How much scrambling do you think there will be from – look, if Indianapolis doesn't make that trade and they're still at 4, once the first two quarterbacks off the board, will they do you foresee them trying to guarantee themselves into that third spot and trading up with Arizona, or do they roll the dice and hope that they get their guy?
Boy, that's a tough call. If it's me, I'm going to take whoever the quarterback is that's there. There's 4 of them. They should get one of them. I don't think, if you're talking about Richardson and Levis, I don't think there's that big of a difference between those guys that I'm gonna jump and give up a lot of capital to move up one spot. But I'm not their GM. I'm not thinking along the same lines as they are. They may have a specific desire, for Richardson or for Young if he's there, or even it's possible Stroud could be there. But I'm of the opinion that Stroud will be ultimately the first pick. So it's going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of posturing, I'm sure, a lot of rumors floating around. But ultimately, I think it's going to stay 1, 2, 3, 4.
Jon,
unless somebody trades up ahead of, Indianapolis. But either way, it's Indianapolis will have a guy.
Jon, is Will Anderson the best non-quarterback in this draft?
That's my opinion. I think he's the best player in the draft.
Break it down for us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, he and Jalen Carter, would it be 1 and 2 or somebody else?
I think it would be right now. I would go Anderson, Stroud, Young, Carter. Is how I would go as far as the top 4. That's kind of the way we have it at this point in time. I'm sure most NFL teams. I think everybody's different, so it just depends on what your needs are. For some teams, Will Anderson wouldn't be the number 1 player in the draft because he might not fit the scheme they're looking for. A straight 4-3 team that wants a rotational edge guy that can move inside if he has to occasionally. He might not be the right fit. So, for example, the Bears, I don't think he would have been a great fit, but hey, he can sit on the edge and rush the passer, and he can play and he can set the edge. So, he can do everything you want, but I wouldn't play him as a 3 technique in a rotation.
Who does he remind you of? And I know that's always dangerous, to try to compare a player who has not yet taken a snap in the NFL, but is there any kind of comparison in your opinion?
Well, in some ways he's unique because when I've watched him play, the first time I really noticed him was 2 years ago in the opening game of the season, and I watched him play the run on the edge, and he plays much bigger than he is, as far as being able to set the edge against the run. So, I'm not sure there's a great comp for him that I can think of off the top of my head. There's some guys that are similar to him, but he, I think, has a lot more talent. The guy that I think about that I've always liked and thought was a real good player is Tyus Bowser from Baltimore. He's very underrated, and there's some similarities. He can set the edge, but Tyus Bowser cannot rush the passer the way that Will Anderson, I think, will be able to in the NFL.
Is his motor 100%?
Looks good to me.
Do you think that Hendon Hooker is the 4th best quarterback or the 5th best quarterback, in this draft?
I think if he's healthy, I think he might be the 4th best. I'm really high on him. When I watched a lot of defensive back video this year, I took some time to look at the end zone view and kind of watch what the quarterback was looking at from behind and how he read coverages, how he, adjusted his eyes, his head, to go to an alternate receiver, and I really liked the way he could make a quick adjustment and the ball would come out of his hands in a hurry. There were some accuracy issues at times, but I think the other 2 guys that are ahead of him right now on everybody's board, have more accuracy issues at this point in their career. So I think a healthy Hendon Hooker, I think, might be the third best quarterback in this draft.
So, quick follow-up. So, say Tennessee, who's got the 41st pick in the draft, is that a good fit for them, seeing as Ryan Tannehill's on his an expiring deal, and they appear to be in a bit of a rebuild?
Yeah, I think so. I think it would be. I think there's a lot of teams, even before that might look at him as a guy to take. I even think there's a chance he slips into the very back end of the first round before it's over. And I'm just speculating. I don't have anything to go on other than I'm playing GM on my own and looking at some of these teams down there and saying, quarterback of the future. He's going to sit for a year. That's an ideal situation. And I think for Tennessee, if they think that he's a guy, that makes sense.
Jon, what position group or position individually do you feel like is the one where teams are going to be able to maybe bide their time a bit more if there's something they're looking for in particular? And which one is at more of a premium, you think, where teams will probably have to strike hard and fast, potentially a run on guys, and then after that it's a little bit emptier?
Well, that's a good question. I think, edge rushers, I think you can wait on those guys a little bit because the draft is loaded with guys like that. And everybody's looking for rotational players these days. You're looking for a 6, 7, 8-man line with, rotation with some teams. And so having that edge guy that can play on the edge and he can slide inside as part of your rotation and give you 25, 35 snaps a game and give you a really good fresh pass rush. There's a lot of guys like that in this draft. So that's a position you can hold off. The offensive tackle position, I think there's some really good guys in the top of the draft and maybe even into the second round, possibly. But after that, it gets slim. So I think you're going to strike while the iron's hot. That's why I think you're going to see guys like Skoronski and Paris Johnson. They're going to go, I think, pretty early, and you might see a bunch of those guys gone by the early part of the second round, maybe 5 or 6 guys.
Jon, we're now a month away. There's boards, everybody. And if I asked you this before, I apologize. I think I asked this to a Cowboys analyst, but you have the boards. Everyone has their board. How many teams have a board with a name on it is of someone they will not draft, or do they put that name in red, or they just not include them at all?
Yes, there are guys. There are guys like that. And I laugh because I actually, back in the day when I was doing some, scouting work, and I sat in with, and with some NFL people, I sat in a board of an NFL team I won't mention, and they would have symbols that they would put on their board next to the guy. And so if the guy had drugs in his background, they had a picture of a syringe on his board. And
wow.
And for that particular team, that would eliminate that player. So, yes, that there is some of that. Some teams absolutely will not touch a guy at quarterback that has a hand size below 9. I know of one team about 6 years ago, a head coach of that team told me, Dan Schonk and I were talking to him. He says, hey, this is a quarterback you think is pretty good. Then he says his hand size is 8.75. We will never touch a kid like that at quarterback. So that was years ago, 7 years ago. But
is that also kind of like Parcells had that deal about the number of, I guess, snaps or starts in college for a quarterback?
Yeah, similar. There's a lot of things you can factor in. Character issues. Things that come up, and as far as their background, that they won't touch them. This guy's not going to fit with us in our community. With his background, we're not going to touch him. Could be the greatest player in the world, but there's, a lot of that stuff doesn't come out. We don't get access to it, so sometimes we get a big surprise when, how come this guy went in the 4th round when we had him as a first-round pick? It happens every year. And some of that security information that comes about the week of the draft shows some things that some teams just shy away from. They're willing to take a chance later on, but and the injury factor. There's medicals that show up. That's why supposedly Nakobe Dean dropped to the 3rd round last year.
Jon, now that we're kind of weaving through these pro days, how much are you starting to see things move, especially for guys who didn't do much of the combine, like Israel Abanikanda from Pittsburgh, who I guess ran a 4.27 at his pro day today?
Yeah, I didn't see that. That's interesting. I'm going to have to take a look at that myself. We always kind of liked him, and that will probably help him, in terms of if anybody has a question on his speed. But I think they knew he was pretty fast, to begin with. So I'm not sure that's going to change much. With speed is important, but functional speed is more important. In other words, how it translates to how you play. So, you have to take a look at that. You can see the guy's fast when you watch him play, and so 4.27, might not be that much difference from 4.4 in terms of how it functions on the field. And we used to say that, sometimes 4.27 means you just get to the wrong place faster. So that's not the case with him, though. But, that stuff does factor in. It factors in that guys didn't work out. I'm disappointed in some guys I really wanted to see, what their workout was going to look like in a pro day, and they didn't work out. So that, and some teams that affects. That's going to not drop them off their board, but it might take them. Maybe they've got a pot of 5 or 6 edge rushers, and all of a sudden this one edge rusher didn't work out. Well, he's not somebody we're going to take in that pod. We'll take him later on, maybe, but not right now.
That's my next question, and you kind of answered part of it. But if, in fact, you're a GM, personnel, whoever it is, coach, and you have, let's say, XYZ as a player, what is the most important criteria? How they played on film in college and against whoever they played against, pro day, the combine, the interviews, when they visit a program or a franchise, I guess, between pro days and the draft. What is the kind of the priority, or is it just a mixed match of whoever we're talking about?
I think it's a mixed match of who we're talking about. I think, and for some teams, and I've talked to a lot of people over the years, and for some teams, how you play, and for some scouts, how they play, what they do on film is more important than anything else. So that's more important. I mean, can you see this kid hustle? Does he have a good motor? Does he make plays? Can he get off blocks if he's a defensive player? Does he have agility in traffic if he's a running back? Maybe he doesn't have breakaway speed, but he's a guy that consistently can average 5 yards per carry because he can break tackles, or he's got really good agility, can make people miss. And he may not hit the home run in the open field, but he's a guy that can gain 180 yards a game for us, if he gets the carries, and we're going to win because of this kid. So how he plays is more important than the stopwatch, but yet all those things factor in because you can't for sure predict how a kid is going to translate to the NFL, because the NFL is different. The windows are a lot tighter for quarterbacks. That getting to the edge is a lot harder for a running back because the speed of the secondary and the outside and the inside linebackers pursuing is better. So that speed does become important. A 5 flat 40 as a running back, no matter how good he plays, is going to be a red flag. And then of course character plays, has a lot to do with it. If the guy comes in and you don't believe he's going to work hard, you don't get the right answers, and you don't get a good feel for him in comparison with somebody else that's similar. For some players and the groups of players, it's a very slim margin between ability levels. And so some of those things like, how they handle themselves in the interview, their poise or not poise, the kind of person they are, that can be the difference maker in guys that are similar.
Thank you, John. Great stuff. Appreciate it. And thanks for your time. I'll be in touch. Hopefully we'll be able to continue on with this if it's okay with your schedule, but I won't put you on the spot. I'll text you here pretty soon. It's been great the last 3 weeks, and hope to have you on a couple more times.
Okay, great. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Jon Cooper, Ourlad Scouting Services. We kind of bounced around a little bit there.
Yeah.